Well, today I have a piece of hickory mounted between centers, and I'm just going to rough it out here with a roughing gouge. You could use a skew chisel here if you want. I see that people do that a lot, but this roughing gouge seems to be the most user-friendly for me. And so that's what I'm going to just get this a rough, round shape, but leave as much bark as possible. Now, this hickory has a lot of character. There's a little knot there you could see. There's some, uh, I don't know what causes the black grain in it, but it's really pretty. I've made some rolling pins out of it. So if you haven't turned hickory, I don't know if it all looks like this, but I think this is pig nut hickory that I found years ago. Right now, normally I do try to mount these just in between the chucks, but this was a little too large, so I had to put it between centers and cut a tenon there so I can fit that in my jaws here for my chuck. So that's all I was doing there, mounting it between centers. A lot of times you'll see me, I will just mount the bark and all in there, and it's not as secure that way, but it does save that extra step. So if you are turning something that's fairly short, you can just mount it between your jaws, at least I do, and it just saves you a little bit of time. Of course, it's always better if you can create a tenon to match your jaws perfectly. You got a lot more surface area that way. Here I'm just using a bowl gouge to kind of pointing at that knot right there, but using a bowl gouge just to remove a lot of excess and to get a basic shape. What I'm making here today is a ring and bracelet holder. These can be multiple different shapes. So here I'm making this more like a cone, so the bracelets will sit on that bigger fat part there, and the rings, of course, will be on this little stem. Sometimes I make these to where the bracelet part is almost like a concave bowl, so it would dip in like a bowl. I'll show you some pictures at the end of some that look like that. Now I've switched over to detail gouge because I've got it roughly to the size that I need, and I'll just have to fine tune it here. So we'll take the detail gouge and try to get a smoother surface. And of course you'll see as I'm turning this, my mind, I didn't even know this, but I decided to do these little steps. So of course, whenever you're turning, sometimes you just go with the flow. So I had no intention until I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, that might look pretty cool. So I'm gonna make these little steps on this one. Each one of these, you can make different shapes with different character. I wanted to make sure that I tried to maintain as much of the wood grain as possible. You'll see when I turn this off, there's those black or dark wood character. And there I've got a ring. When you're making these, if you're making them specifically for someone, like your daughter or your granddaughter, your wife, if you can get a ring size or borrow a ring so that you can fine tune this, it would be helpful because people's fingers are different sizes. So this one, I have my wife's ring that I can kind of use as a reference. And it's very important to get the size pretty close so that you can have the ring not just go loose all the way to the bottom, but you also don't want it real tight at the top. It would be nice if you could fit 2, 3, 4 rings on here. So sometimes you can adjust the thickness with sandpaper, and I did that a little bit, just a little bit of sandpaper, because just taking a millimeter off can make a world of difference on how far the ring goes down. So that's where I would like some of the rings to go, down about halfway or maybe just a hair farther. And of course, women wear different size rings, like for their ring finger, their middle finger, so you can make these to where it can fit each ring finger a little bit further down the stem. Hope that makes sense. So here I'm just adjusting the shape. Of course, this is up to you, but this is a really easy project. It's a pretty easy project for a beginner. So if you're new to wood turning, and you know your wife or some lady in your family would like to have one of these, actually, I use this for my my rings too. So it can actually be for a husband or a grandfather or a son or something too. my wife and I have these sitting right beside each other, and I've got a few spare silicone rings that I keep on there. But here I'm putting a little bit of wood butter on, just shining this up a little bit, turning the lathe up, speed up, so that I can polish it really well. And there you go. I just love the hickory grain. I will say the hickory does, it is a little harder. So you need to have sharp tools, and you need to use slicing cuts, because it will tear out. At least that's what I've discovered. So it's a very hard wood, so you don't need to sand it much. It does create a good finish if you use sharp tools and you use slicing cuts. But here is that one I turned. You can kind of tell how it turned out. And here's some other shapes and sizes with different woods. Thanks for watching.